An S/4HANA transition takes years, tens of millions of dollars, and touches every single corner of the enterprise. For most organizations, it is the single largest technology investment and operational shift they will make in a decade. But inside these massive programs, teams consistently make a category error. They treat the migration as a technology replacement, aiming to pick up existing business processes and drop them intact onto the new software, just to hit a go-live date. Viewing S/4HANA as an operating model redesign allows the organization to build the specific architecture required for modern compliance, something the legacy system was never designed to handle. Program management offices prioritize launch stability above all else. They ask, what do you need to go live? This focus often strips out architectural improvements, leaving the tax function to inherit a decade of compounding technical debt. Migrating a pre-digital compliance architecture into a modern ERP does not improve the process. It ensures structural compliance problems will surface faster, propagate further, and cost exponentially more to resolve in a real-time environment. In the old legacy SAP ECC environment, transactions were processed in distinct batches. This created a natural time buffer between transaction creation and compliance validation. This buffer allowed manual intervention. Errors were discovered during period-end reconciliation, giving tax teams weeks to correct information. But S/4HANA eliminates that delay. Transactions process in real time. An invoice hits the system and immediately bounces against a government validation platform. The quiet month-end correction period is gone. An error once caught in a batch review now causes an immediate operational failure, a rejected invoice, a blocked payment, or a shipment halted. If the architecture beneath S/4HANA isn't redesigned, the system's speed becomes a liability. Migrating the old setup simply accelerates that structural failure to a dangerous velocity that the legacy system never could have reached. Blueprinting sessions often rely on the phrase, "We will handle tax later." Deferring this decision locks the company into an outdated model by default, as the flexibility of the migration window quickly closes. Most programs default to the ERP-centric model. This attempts to manage compliance by embedding logic and rules directly inside the SAP core. IT teams use native SAP tools to build custom Z programs and jurisdiction-specific tax codes. They are effectively bolting local compliance requirements directly onto the ERP core to keep the project scope narrow. This path appeals to PMOs because it uses familiar SAP configuration and meets the immediate go-live milestones without requiring external platform integrations. In terms of long-term impact, the ERP-centric model represents a low upfront effort. It gets the system running on time. However, because compliance logic is baked into the core, every future SAP upgrade requires massive retesting of local customizations. Regulatory updates move at the speed of an IT project, and data remains fragmented across different local configurations. Choosing the ERP-centric model trades a manageable implementation phase for a decade of expensive and restrictive technical debt. The second path is the decoupled architecture, which externalizes compliance logic to keep the ERP core clean. This path requires the global head of tax to act as an architectural co-designer during blueprinting, ensuring the system is built for regulatory requirements rather than just IT stability. In this model, tax determination and regulatory reporting happen in a dedicated data orchestration layer. This layer connects to SAP via standard APIs, leaving the transaction core untouched by local compliance code. The decoupled architecture shows a different profile on our matrix. It requires high cross-functional effort during the design phase to align tax, finance, and IT. The long-term payoff begins with upgrade friction. Because the core is clean, SAP upgrades can happen rapidly without the risk of breaking local tax logic. Regulatory updates are handled as external configurations. New mandates can be activated in the compliance layer at the speed of the regulator, rather than through an internal SAP development project. Finally, the system generates a unified canonical data model. This provides a single, validated source of truth for global recording, replacing the mess of incompatible local formats. This model demands more from the project team upfront. It requires a larger initial budget and complex alignment between functions before go-live. Taking on this design work today allows the organization to scale across jurisdictions without adding complexity to the ERP core in the future. We can map the correct choice based on your organizational profile. Node 1 represents a company operating in a single jurisdiction with stable regulations. If you do not need global intelligence and regulations are static, the ERP-centric path is viable. Node 2 covers multinational organizations facing real-time mandates and those planning to deploy AI in finance. For this profile, the decoupled architecture is the only way to manage real-time validation without disrupting core ERP operations or accumulating unsustainable technical debt. S/4HANA acts as a magnifying glass. It does not fix your underlying architecture. It exponentially amplifies the consequences of whichever path you choose during blueprinting. The architectural choices made today determine whether the organization can transition to an Internet of Agents model, where AI handles validation and reconciliation autonomously. These agents require clean, consistent data to function. Raw ERP data is often locally structured and inconsistent across entities. An agent trying to reconcile a German invoice against a Brazilian shipment would struggle with missing tax attributes and incompatible field definitions. The decoupled architecture solves this by creating a canonical data model. This governed intelligence hub allows agents to access standardized, validated data without competing for access to the raw ERP core or risking a system crash. Choosing the legacy ERP-centric path traps you in manual processes. AI agents cannot operate effectively on fragmented, locally customized data, closing the door on autonomous finance for the next decade. Hitting a go-live date is not a sufficient measure of success if the program simply rebuilds the past at a higher speed. The blueprint phase is a rare window of organizational attention. Using it to redesign the compliance foundation provides a structural advantage that becomes far more difficult and expensive to build once the migration is over.